You're watching Exit 1055 with your host, Richard Rose.
Welcome back. Well, going green, it's an issue that draws support from all corners, especially the use of solar panels to draw energy from the sun. But as TV 1055's Carolyn Gussoff explains, not everyone's happy about the spread of solar.
This sprawling sod farm has provided homes with serene views for years, but green grass may be replaced by green energy. And neighbors fear what a solar farm will do to their property values and health.
An industrial-size solar power plant, although it is green energy, which we are in favor of, does not belong on land that is zoned residential.
I think it's a stigma with respect to the unknown.
The Shoreham residents are fighting against plans to build 10-foot-high solar panels like these across 60 acres. It would generate energy, but none of it directly benefiting the folks whose view would be replaced by this. They say solar plans were fast-tracked with little notice.
I think renewable energy is the future, but a project of this size and magnitude should not be done this quietly.
Throughout Long Island, civic leaders complain they've been blindsided, learning about solar farms too late. According to PSEG, 51 solar projects are approved, with 76 more on the way. Some will sit atop box stores, others will change the look of open space.
They need to bring the people into the conversation.
It's not a transparent process. And secondly, we have a policy. We don't trade green for green. Energy independent by destroying the thing that makes oxygen is just stupid.
Brookhaven civic leaders found out about solar projects through what they call a confusing and vague website. PSEG says public disclosure isn't its job. Local governments must inform communities about plans for solar farms, but the utility acknowledges there has been an information gap. PSEG promises better outreach. Critics say go green, but don't keep communities in the dark. In Shoreham, Long Island, Carolyn Gussoff, TV 1055.
Now, the community groups have since withdrawn their appeal of this project, which had already gotten state Supreme Court approval, and construction has begun, although it's still, some approvals are needed through the local town planning board. So we'll see what happens in the end, but in many ways demonstrates the debate that's going on over solar and farm country. And joining us now is Mike Bailis from SUNation Solar Systems, one of the largest solar panel providers on Long Island. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bailis.
Thank you.
You know, it's a bit of a divide, but is this pitting environmentalists against environmentalists, you think?
A little bit. The reality is that we need more solar, and yet people want solar located in places where they don't see it. And if it's within their community, they have a question about whether it should be there or not.
Yeah, I think people are still kind of surprised, though, to find that sometimes in the neighborhoods of some of the environmentalists, they don't want solar farms, which just seems kind of funny on the face of it.
Well, all solar is good. The real question is, where should we put it?
And where do you stand on that? Because I know not all solar providers are pushing to put these projects in farm country.
Well, unfortunately, we live on an island and land is precious. And yet there are thousands and thousands of buildings that don't have solar on them yet that we could use for solar instead of using the land and keep the land precious.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that at this point we'd be entertaining the idea that any new building that's put up, that there has to be some consideration for solar. Are we on our way to that, do you think, at all?
I think at some point it may be mandated. It's something that's already being done in California. Any new development, any new building now has to have a solar roof. So I would expect within the next 3, 4, 5 years we might see that.
Well, how big is the solar industry on Long Island? Because it's considered to have been booming.
Oh, we doubled our business this past year, and we expect to double it again in the next year or two.
How many solar placements would you say there are now on Long Island, including residents and commercial?
Over 30,000 now. That's tremendous. I mean, even though it represents a very small percentage of the electrical generation that is needed, it's still a tremendous increase. I mean, we just a few years ago had 10,000, now we're at 30.
Well, you know, most people are doing it in their homes, and it's a fairly significant investment. How much would a typical homeowner have to pay?
Well, because of the incentives, of course, it's less, but the initial investment typically is around $35,000.
And then the incentives are the subsidies that you were...
Well, there's federal...
There were a number of them.
Sure, there's federal tax credits, there's state tax credits. There were incentives available through NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. They've already run out, although the rest of the state still has them. It was really a supply and demand issue. But we don't need... That
shows how many people wanted to do it here.
Exactly.
The amount that was allotted for Long Island has run out. They're going to renew that?
No, and we don't need it. Honestly, we're very happy that the rebate program has really expired. We're going to deal without it, and that's fine. We're more interested in dealing with other issues to continue to promote solar.
And that's where the next comes up, because PSE&G has talked about something called net metering. And you're going to have to explain to folks who haven't tried to put up a solar,
Sure,
that the way that, most, as I understood it, most homeowners did is they would expect to basically pay no power bill for 8, 10, 15, rest of the life of the house, and get their money back that way.
Right.
Now you're worried that this plan by PSE&G is going to change that. Explain.
Well, they've put in a request to the Public Service Commission to adjust the net metering law. What net metering is when a solar array is producing power during the day, generally much in excess of what the house is actually using, all that extra power gets driven into the grid, and essentially a meter turns backwards. So when that happens, the utility company is essentially offsetting your rate at the same price that you're normally buying it for. So during the day, you send it out to the grid. At night, you buy it back. And if the system is designed properly, at the end of the year, after a 12-month cycle, you're basically around zero.
Yeah, and some people getting small checks back.
Sure. If their system is a little oversized or they anticipate future additional energy consumption, they design it a little higher.
Well, okay, so PSE&G is saying, it implies to me anyway, that they think in a way folks are getting a free ride. That they're not paying for the system like the other customers are, because they're either paying no bill by selling energy back to the utility, or even getting a little money back.
Well, on the face value, yes, but there are significant benefits that solar brings to the grid. Besides the environmental benefits, which are huge, the grid with distributed generation is much stronger. In fact, been documented that the more solar distributed throughout the grid makes the grid so strong that it would reduce possibly situations where the power goes out. Instead of it being out for many hours, it could be out for just a short period.
PSE&G is saying, but we still have to maintain the system, and you are benefiting it, although you're sending us stuff. You're part of the system, so you need to pay part of the cost. Net metering would help us recover those costs that homeowners are benefiting from being in the system.
Sure. Well, again, the utility company kind of set a precedent. They set up a program called a feed-in tariff, where they're buying solar electricity from developers at a price of between 17 and 22 cents a kilowatt hour. If they're prepared to pay that much for electricity, at this point, why would the homeowner not get the same value?
Yeah, because it's a much smaller amount that they want to compensate the homeowner. Do you think, though, if that goes through, and I guess some other parties have to weigh in on this in the state even to allow it, if it goes through, do you think it would change the rush to homeowners to go to solar? Because, they could figure on eventually saving money.
Right. Without net metering, the way it sits right now, it would have a huge impact on the industry. I mean, fortunately, there is a consortium of upstate investor-owned utilities and a group of solar developers that have come together and put a proposal together to the Public Service Commission that spells out a program that provides stable, long-term rates for homeowners that
well, that's where that debate stands right now, and a lot of homeowners with a stake in it, and more who have been thinking about it, and we'll certainly be following this, that you brought to our attention. Mike Bailis with SUNation Solar Systems. Thanks for coming in and explaining the impact on your industry.
Well, appreciate it.
And we'll be right back.